more tariffs, less tariffs, yes tariffs, no tariffs, pause tariffs. The market's going up, the market's going down. What the heck is going on? Does Donald Trump even have a tariff plan? Yes, he does. And it might actually be a brilliant one, but it isn't going to do what he's telling us. Let me explain. There is something very scary going on here. Welcome to Red, Blue, and Screwed, a philosophy all along podcast. I'm a professional philosopher, and I like to use the tools of philosophy to help me understand things on a deeper level. Okay, so what's the deal? So we all know what a tariff is. The whole plan of these tariffs is to basically try and incentivize companies to have goods made here in the United States. In other words, you tax a good that comes into the United States from another country. One of the worries has always been that we have all of these companies that are United States companies, but they actually make stuff in other places, and then they just have it shipped here to the United States, and it's still cheaper for them than having it made here in the US using US labor. So what we do is we tax it coming in, and then the companies go, well, that was too expensive, let me make it in the United States anyways. But this does not work. Why? Simply because it's too expensive. For the incentive to work, it's got to be cheaper for the company to make the good here than to make it somewhere else and then ship it overseas, right? Well, the problem, of course, ends up being is how do you make it cheaper? U.S. labor tends to be pretty expensive. We don't like to be paid very poorly. And you also have the problem of having to change your supply chain, which costs a lot of money, but also maybe building a new factory and all of the costs that are associated with that. So all of those costs, of course, get put on the price of the item. It's not like the stockholders and the CEO are going to be like, okay, you know what? We're going to eat that. We're going to take a little bit less profit so that the price stays the same while we're making this shift. No, they raise the price. And when it comes to small businesses, they have to raise the price, right? They are in a very slim margin kind of space already. So the big companies, maybe they have more wiggle room, but the little companies, they have to raise the price because they're barely making profit in the first place. So we have this tremendous cost. And we already know from what Republicans have said that the plan ends up generally being, okay, when they come here, when they have to recreate a supply chain, when they have to build new factories, what are they going to do? They're going to make sure that they automate while they're doing that, because that's the wave of the future. So unless there's some sort of legislation passed to prevent companies from using AI and automation to build stuff, they're of course going to go that way because that's way cheaper than American labor. It's even cheaper than labor other places. So it'll be made here, but still not by American hands. They'll have a machine do it. Or they'll have children do it. And no, I'm not making that up. Look at Florida, for instance, where they're literally trying to pass legislation right now to make it so that 14-year-olds can work. Well, why do you want to do that? Because they charge way less for their labor. It's a lot cheaper. Okay, so that plan doesn't work. It would take years, it would raise prices on consumers, consumers would really be hurting. So if that really isn't kind of the plan, what's actually going on in Trump's head? Well, let's be honest. Donald Trump is a creature of the 1980s. He believes in the stock market. Right now he's trying to say, no, I really don't worry about it. But he has touted it multiple times, right? Whenever the stock market has gone up under his administration, he's been like, look what I've done. He believes in it and he loves it. And if there's one thing better than being able to show that the stock market is going up because of you, it's actually owning it. It's having control of it. It's that idea of like, I can move my pinky finger and all of a sudden it's going to change the stocks. What if it was possible to make the US economy one that is actually not just benefiting a few wealthy people, but is actually controlled by, owned by them? It is one that in fact serves them, and it becomes one that is no longer dependent on the free purchasing and production of goods and services. It becomes a mirage economy. Let me explain what I mean here. So let's just look at two simple factors. One, when Donald Trump went on Twitter and said, buy. So he had put the tariffs out there, and then all of a sudden the stock market starts to tank, right? We had one of the biggest drops in US history. Okay, well, then the next day he goes out on Twitter and he says, now's a great time to buy. And everyone who did buy made a ton of money in that moment, because what happened then, he put out an announcement saying, oh, okay, well, actually, I'm going to put a pause on these tariffs. So the stock market rallied. boom, a whole bunch of investors made a lot of money. But who are the kinds of people who can actually do that? Who are the kinds of people who are able to put money in the stock market in the first place? Well, if you had $1,000 in the stock market, well, you maybe earned $100, which is nice. But the people who had a lot more, the people who have millions spread throughout different parts of the stocks, oh man, they made a lot of money in an incredibly short period of time. So the people who are really benefited by this kind of behavior are the wealthy, and the people who are able to buy and sell in the stock market, they have access to that kind of wealth in the first place. But it also really benefits people who are dealing in things like real estate, because when you move the economy down and people are having to sell and things are getting too expensive for them and the interest rates and so on and so forth, well, when things start to improve, all of a sudden the people who can buy that real estate, the people who can buy your home and then rent it to you, are the wealthy. Okay, so that's one thing that we're seeing happen is that it seems that part of the goal here is to put us in a position where there's a few people who are benefiting financially from the stock market because Donald Trump is kind of taking control of it. But also look at this whiplash effect. Investors are in a position now where they're just watching Donald Trump to see what happens. What are they not watching when they do this? They are not watching the buying and selling of goods. They're watching Donald Trump's Twitter. They're not looking at the numbers of, oh, is this company selling more or selling less? They're literally watching to see what he says next. And so you have this whiplash where it's going up and it's going down, it's going up and it's going down because of the things he's saying, that they get a little bit numb to the actual economic realities and really just concern themselves with more believing in this man. Okay, well, he says that he's going to do this one thing, but we know he's probably going to change his mind in a day or two, so we're not really going to panic. What we're going to do is we're going to believe. We're going to believe in him, right? You start becoming in a position where it becomes about the man. Okay. So is there, in fact, any evidence to what I'm saying? Yes. Basically, what I'm saying is the U.S. economy is increasingly influenced by personality of specific people like Donald Trump. What it does is it creates economic personality bubbles where economic realities are overshadowed by the narratives, by the stories that these people are creating for us. And there is research that supports that. So if you look at things like behavioral finance, which is super interesting, look into that. Look into behavioral economics, right? These are all psychologists and economists who are trying to look at things not just in terms of, okay, what are the numbers, but how people actually behave and how they actually think. Investor behavior isn't just a matter of, okay, this is selling well. It's also a matter of their feelings and their thoughts and feelings. And so the Journal of Behavioral and Experimental Finance found things like the big 5 personality traits correlate with investors' belief about the stock market, right? Well, that's all psychological stuff. So we know that their psychology is involved with it. And there's a perfect case study in this, and it's Elon Musk. So Elon Musk's Tesla and a fair number of the other things that he's bought or companies that he's created do not always do particularly well when it comes to their ability to actually sell something. What is Elon Musk actually selling that has kept something like Tesla propped up and doing so well and so visible? It's actually Elon Musk himself. Despite long and massive and significant periods of financial underperformance, Tesla has maintained high market valuations, mostly because of Musk's ability to inspire confidence and for him to make people believe in his dream, right? Tesla's been doing poorly because people have been not buying them and vandalizing them. And he got all of his people together, people who work at Tesla factories, people who have investments in Tesla. And he said, don't worry, we're going to get through this. You got to believe in my dream. So what are they actually buying into? They're not buying into whether or not Tesla's actually making money. Things like Twitter, things like Tesla, these companies are often not making money, but people are still buying into them because they believe in the man. When Twitter went up in value, despite the fact that it had nothing to do with what was being bought and sold because of the election, that was about personality, right? That had nothing to do with economic reality. An economic bubble where prices inflate because of speculative behavior and not intrinsic value, not in the value of the product, not because of what's actually happening with its selling, are real problems. And we've seen them multiple times, like the dot-com bubble, right? These things pop, right? The bubble that led to the Great Recession. But the goal here, I think, is just to create a bubble that can be maintained, because it's no longer just about a one kind of speculative thing like .coms and websites and being able to sell stuff through the internet. And it's not just about things like loans, underwater loans for houses and things like that. It's literally about, we're going to believe in this person. And if you become so desperate in this, right, you become in a position where, if you stop to believe in them, you stop believing in them, you lose all your money. The stock market and our economy in general has always been one that's kind of dependent on a certain amount of faith. You have to believe that the dollar is worth something to be willing to hoard them to yourself. Otherwise, you're going to hoard like gold or food. So you have to have this level of faith. And so what's happening is people like Elon Musk and people like Donald Trump are trying to have us no longer have faith in the economy in itself, no longer have faith in the American worker, no longer have faith in the market, no longer have faith in the ability of people to make decisions about what they should be buying and selling, or even have faith in the basic numbers of actually what is being bought and sold. They're asking us to have faith in them, and that gives them control over the market. So no longer is it just kind of serving them, but it is actually something that they get to use to serve themselves, but also other people who agree with them. They can manipulate the market to get companies to do what they want, and to get the individuals who are involved in companies to do what they want. They can bend the market to its will, so that companies that would normally just do the things that they believe in and do the things that they're right, or invest in the things in the way that they think are in the best interest of their company or their workers or just their stockholders, now they're doing it for Trump. It is an oligarchical mirage. Create an economy, create a bubble that's really created for you by this oligarchy, by these wealthy people in power. It's a personality cult bubble that we are creating right now, where people are buying into stocks and buying into companies that aren't actually making them money. And that, I think, at the end of the day, is the real purpose of these tariffs. It's not going to bring manufacturing back to the United States in any significant way, particularly in regards to getting American workers higher paychecks and getting them better jobs. It's not going to do that. That's not what the math bears out. But what will happen is people like Donald Trump and people like Elon Musk will have even more control and power over the free market itself, making it, therefore, no longer free. Okay, if you like this, please like, please subscribe, but please follow me wherever you get your podcasts. If you disagree, if I miss something, please pop it in the comments. I love to have conversations with you all. And with that, I hope you have a good day.